Hey folks, Malforian here. Welcome back to another Grey Eminence Dev Diary. Today it is Dev Diary 8, all about diplomacy. It's got some very nice art, as always, for these Dev Diaries. But with that being said, let's just get on with it. So, like I said, it's all going to be about diplomacy, the system which countries can secure or doom their future. Like in real life, diplomacy in Grey Eminence is the art of compromise. Very rarely will a situation between two parties be so lopsided that a unilateral decision can be made. I mean, we've all played grand strategy games. I think we know that's a lie. Diplomacy almost always happens through negotiations or their failure, which can escalate into war. So this is really just talking about the different kinds of diplomatic statuses in the game, how they will work. So, think of vassals, military alliances, economic alliances, things like that. That's really what it's going to be talking about during the Dev Diary today. So we're just going to go on to subject, which is the first of the four they mentioned. Subject relationships involve one country giving up some of its sovereignty to another in exchange for certain benefits. There are various types of subjects in the game, each with their own mechanics. Not all subject types are available at the start of the game. Some very advanced ones, like protectorates or client states, are gated behind certain technologies, which they have mentioned before. There's quite a lot of stuff. Because the game does last, I think it was 800 years, there's obviously some things that aren't available at the beginning. Think of it like if you've played Crusader Kings and you've played EU4, there's, client states. You don't get those in Crusader Kings because they didn't really exist in that time frame, but they did in EU4. So obviously this has got to bridge basically that entire time frame. So there's some things that you can't get straight away, but you will unlock as you progress through the game. The most common subject relationship in 1356 is a vassalage. I'm not going to go into this. I think we all know what vassalage is. You vassalize a county or a duchy, and then they become part of your realm. You become their liege, and they usually give you soldiers and gold, and all those kind of things to basically they're part of your realm, and they're not always happy about it. Another type of subject is tributary, which again is like vassalage, but tributaries aren't part of your realm. So if you're like France, you could tributary Brittany. Now, it wouldn't show as France on the map. Obviously, Brittany will be separate, but usually they will pay you like gold to basically stave off you taking them over. And that's basically how it works. You went up to countries and said, I'm not going to take you over if you give me a lot of gold or you give me troops maybe, or if there's trade in the game, maybe it's, you can stay independent Brittany, but you give me X amount of trade a year and then I won't attack you. So that's kind of like the two versions. Vassalage is where you directly control them and they would appear under your realm. Tributary is a little bit looser. Tributary is like a threat. Give me something or you will be part of my realm. So maybe for land that you don't want to take yourself, but you want to get some benefit from doing it. So that's kind of how subjects will work. Dynastic relationships are reserved for counties with a dynastic source of legitimacy and where the ruler is also the head of the government. These relationships are unique in that they're conditional on the maintenance of certain dynastic circumstances between two countries. So this is, like royal families, like Habsburgs, and marrying other heads of realms on the map, and then maybe having children, and then those two realms are in an alliance together because the two houses want to see it that way. So that's basically how they work. The obvious example of a dynastic relationship is dynastic marriage, which is what I was talking about. This relationship is established when a member of one country's ruling dynasty marries into another country's ruling dynasty. A certain degree of relation is required for such a marriage to result in a dynastic marriage. For example, marrying third cousins wouldn't do the trick. It's obviously got to be someone important, like a king and the other king's daughter or something like that. Like second or third cousins, they're not important enough. They're never going to have power themselves, so they're obviously not going to count towards some kind of major alliance. Dynastic marriages are particularly important during the game's first few centuries when diplomacy between countries was an intensely personal affair. Having a dynastic marriage makes a country more likely to accept further diplomatic proposals, depending on its laws and technology. Dynastic marriages may even be a requirement to form stronger diplomatic relations. Thus, choosing who to marry your ruler's children to becomes an important strategic decision, and a lack of such children become a death knell for the unprepared. You get that first tier of alliance by marrying, but then you can go further and further, kind of interlocking the relationship even further. And imagine you could probably, you can take over another realm by marrying, and then your child inherits the other realm. Another dynastic relationship with unique mechanics is the personal union. Like dynastic marriages, personal unions are a circumstantial relationship They occur when the same ruler reigns over 2 or more countries. This might happen diplomatically, though war or via carefully planned inheritance. By default, the country's original ruler is the senior partner, and all other countries, even if they are higher in rank, which is interesting, become junior partners, though you, the player, may force through your ruler to migrate to one of the junior partners, basically making them the senior partner. So this is, say, you're the ruler of England, you inherit Scotland. You're the King of England, but you're also the King of Scotland. But you could change it so you become the King of Scotland is your main title, and your realm would show as Scotland, but England is your junior title, basically. So kind of similar to the one before, to be honest. I always kind of see these as the same thing, but I know they are slightly different. You'll notice that personal unions are not considered a subject relationship. That's because they aren't. Functionally, junior partners remain independent countries with an absentee ruler, which comes with a whole set of other problems, but that's a story for another time, so that's going to be a future dev diary. The ruler might still try to leverage the resources of the junior partner to further the ends of their original country, but that's far from guaranteed. In general, the elites and population of a junior partner will not appreciate being forced to die and fight for conflicts that their homeland has nothing to do with. So maybe I was wrong actually before. You'll notice that personal unions are not considered a subject relationship. It's because they aren't. Functionally, the junior partner remains independent. Oh, so no, you it wouldn't show as one realm. You would be like, for that example, you'd be the King of England and rule Scotland, but Scotland would still be a separate country. They wouldn't become one uniformed realm. So that is the difference between the two. So I'm sure someone probably shouted that out in the comments whilst I was reading that out and thinking aloud, but no, that is the difference. Okay, that makes more sense. Military relationships revolve around commitments to participate or defend against armed conflicts. We won't reveal too much here. Again, there's going to be another dev diary about this in the future because there's unannounced features related to war, which is interesting. We haven't actually seen, I don't think, how war is actually going to work on the map. Whether it's going to work like a normal grand strategy game, or is it maybe going to work a bit more like Victoria 3 is going to work, where you get into wars, but then you don't actually control the war directly yourself. Not like in, like Civilization, where you move units across the map. You would have fronts and things like that. So it will be interesting to see what they've decided on, unless they have announced it, but I don't think they have. But in general, we're departing from the established grand strategy tradition by separating the general alliance concept into individual relationships. This is cool. I do like in the game how they are changing, putting their own spin on a lot of normal mechanics you see in grand strategy games. The first military relationship we'll look into is mutual defense. Under this arrangement, two countries agree to assist each other if either one is attacked. It's important to note that this is not necessarily mean that your country will outright join the war on the side of its promised defender. I thought that was the whole point of it, but we all know how these agreements have gone in history. As we mentioned before, not all wars in Grey Eminence are total wars. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The vast majority of wars during the game are limited in scope. As a consequence, mutual defense treaties may result in a varying amount of support, depending in large part on the scope of the war itself and strategic interests of the defenders. Oh, so they're saying if it's just like a little skirmish, you might not actually join the war. I guess maybe you can give them supplies or something and not actually take active part in the war itself. I'm sure we'll see more about that in the future as well. A relationship similar to mutual defense is a guarantee. It too invokes protection against invaders, but only for one side. This is where you basically just say, again, we'll use England as an example. Ireland, I will guarantee your independence. And then if somebody attacked Ireland, you would join the defense of Ireland. But if Ireland went to war, you wouldn't. And it's kind of a little bit like a mutual defense, but if somebody declared war on England, Ireland wouldn't have to come and help them. It's kind of like a one-sided thing. You're just saying, like, don't attack this place. I think historically, England had it with, was it Belgium for World War I or World War II? Where they said, if you go into Belgium, we will declare war on you. So that's basically how that one works. A different sort of military relationship is non-aggression. It is not immediately available in 1356, but is unlocked through technology. It provides a way for countries to weasel out of other obligations if they are committed to under the pretext of avoiding confrontation with a third party. Breaking relationships obviously comes with great diplomatic penalties. Countries are less likely to trust you, yet non-aggression relationships lessen the penalties for third parties. Again, to use that example, I think this is, if it's England, Ireland, and Scotland, we'll say, if you have a non-aggression pact with Scotland, but you were guaranteeing Ireland, if Scotland attacked Ireland, you could say, actually, I can't help you, Ireland, because I've got a non-aggression pact with Scotland, so I can't attack them, so good luck, you're on your own. I think that's basically roughly how that works. You can use this as like a way to get out of other alliances that you've got, because as we all know historically, the web of alliances always works out fantastic, and it never caused any issues in history at all. And we're on to economics. I think this is the third of the four. Oh no, it's the last one. Finally, economic relationships exist to facilitate or enforce trade and economic transfers between countries. They offer the widest variety of potential uses, from supporting struggling allies or enemies of enemies to outright destroying hostile economies. Unlike most relationships we've described so far, economic relationships usually have a specific duration or time limit. So these are like, you'll have a 5-year trade alliance rather than if you're in a proper alliance, that's basically probably when your ruler died, that alliance ended, or later on in history until for whatever reason that alliance broke up. They generally aren't like 5-year alliances, but trade ones generally work that way. Coming off of the previous topic of war, the classic example of an economic relationship is war reparations. Upon the successful conclusion of a conflict, each victorious country can extract reparations from the defeated parties in proportion to the cost of damages it has suffered. In contrast to voluntary relationships or circumstantial ones, war reparations cannot be dissolved at will. In general, only particularly dire situations, for example bankruptcy or a coup, can clear away relationships that have been forced through war. So yeah, this is one where you can't say yes or no. If you lose the war, you are just going to have war reparations like forced on you, and you have no way to dodge them, unless you're Germany. And again, we all know how that worked out. Again, just a different kind of diplomatic relation that you can have. The economic relationship with the most potential impact of the game is embargo. It mandates the total cessation of trade between two countries, which, depending on how autocratic they are and how enforceable their embargo is, can have a disastrous and far-reaching consequences. We've got a separate dev diary dedicated to economic and trade, but suffice to say, rerouting trade routes due to an embargo can impact the global economy significantly, especially in the later stages of the game. On the opposite side of the embargo is a customs union, which encourages trade between countries by eliminating any tariffs that exist between them. So yeah, we're getting tariffs with how trade is going to work, which is interesting. I don't think that was mentioned before. As a side note, tariffs are not listed as an economic relationship because they're present by default in varying magnitude between all countries. So that means it's always in the background working, but you could do a customs union to lower. Say there's like 20% tariff on steel. You could have a customs union with another country and say, we'll make it free to trade steel between each other. You won't have to pay any tariffs. Kind of like a little free trade agreement or something like that. Removing tariffs on incoming goods may render some of your country's industries uncompetitive, so it's something to keep an eye out when you're considering such relationships. So again, because of the time frame of this game, you are going to go from a lot of sustenance, a lot of just farming and stuff like that, and mining, I would imagine, at the beginning of the game. And then by the end, we're going to be making tanks. Not tanks, I don't think it goes that far, but we're going to be making furniture, a lot of proper goods for people to trade, and weaponry and things like that. So it is definitely going to change how trade works. It'll be interesting to see how trade does evolve during the game. I imagine it must do in some way. Again, that'll be covered in a future dev diary. And we've got another nice screenshot. So the country of Flanders, nice little flag. Obviously this tells you, I guess, that it's maybe farming or grasslands. Plutocratic monarchy. It's got 26 tiles? No. No tiles. And then I don't know what this is. I don't know if that means it's part of a duchy with 2 other realms. I'm not sure. We haven't had this explained to us before. Louis II is a Catholic Flemish ruler, and this is his wife, I must imagine. This must be his coat of arms for his house. And then I don't know what this is. It looks like DNA, so maybe there's some kind of disease happening here or something. So we've got the general age, social class, culture, and religion. So I guess this is Catholic, and then maybe this is Protestant, this little slither here, and then this must be Flemish, and then I don't even want to guess. Flanders, maybe French? I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure where Flanders is exactly on a map. 20% literacy, 12% corruption. The population, I guess how quick it's growing, the treasury and how quick it's growing, and then the GDP and how quick that is growing as well. These are the elites, the ruling, kind of like the ruling class of elites in the county, how much power each faction has, the administration level, so how efficient, I guess, the county is running, and then the military size here, the navy size. They did mention about trading, so it looks like good deficits, so I guess you would trade salt and food into this county, and then the surpluses clothes and furniture, which you would trade away, I guess. And then there's some peasant discontent. And then the diplomatic relations, it does mention down here, taking the County of Flanders, for example, we can see that it starts the game off with several diplomatic relations. It has a dynastic marriage with Burgundy by virtue of the betrothal between Margaret and the Duke of Burgundy. The Count of Flanders also rules the County of Nevers in personal union and a secured mutual defence with the Kingdom of France. So this is obviously the Kingdom of France, and then this is the personal union with Nevers. Nevers say Nevers. And yeah, not too bad. Like I say, I don't mind the UI. I think we talked about this last week. The UI is okay. I'm not 100% sure about the portraits, just because I'm not 100% sure how much variety there is. I'm sure they'll go into it in the future. But the layout, it's not too bad. You can see everything that you need to see, so I'm not going to be too upset about it if it stays that way. And then the last bit, negotiations. Most diplomatic relations are formed voluntarily through negotiations. This is a process where both countries can suggest concessions towards a common end and the establishment of a specific relationship. One side suggests a specific deal and the other can either accept, reject, or propose an amended version. For example, a small country might try and bribe its larger neighbour into a guarantee by offering to take on some of its loans or provide assistance in other matters at some future date through favours. In the case of AI opponents, you'll always know how they evaluate a particular offer beforehand. You can shorten this process significantly. So basically, how these systems work in most games. If you've played Civilization, EU4, any grand strategy game, it's going to work basically the same way. It's important to note that the negotiations always happen between characters, even when it's you, the player, negotiating for your side. Thus, character attitudes can have an impact on the likelihood of acceptance. Oh, well, this is interesting. This is going to work different to how I thought. Like, I knew characters affected things, but it looks like, you know, if you have maybe a stubborn character, they're not going to give an alliance that maybe a generous character maybe is a bit more lenient and will give you an alliance or negotiation that you wouldn't get maybe off another character for the same setup between countries. So it'll be interesting to see, obviously, in a future dev diary how exactly that's going to work. And then modability. I know I say this every time we have one of these. I don't mod myself, but obviously the game is primarily being made by modders of other games, so they obviously are building the game to be very mod friendly. And it's just talking about how you could use these systems to have different systems. So there we go. Yeah, the next dev diary is on May the 21st. As I always say, yeah, follow their Discord and subreddit if you're interested in the game. The developers are very active on both. And then obviously they've got YouTube and all that other good stuff as well. So, well, we're going to leave it there for today. As always, leave a comment down below if you've got some feedback on what we've seen here today. A lot of interesting stuff. I suppose this is the most general dev diary that we've seen. A lot of these systems are going to work like they do in other games, but still, let's have a little chat down below if you're interested. Like the video, but for now, we're going to leave it there, and I'll see you in the next one.